You gotta see this one. Leftist media figures are increasingly vocal about the Democrats' mishandling of the current elections, expressing frustration with the party's strategies. These criticisms increased after the recent presidential debate, where many are arguing on the need to ditch negative campaigning and instead focus on the better policy proposals to attract more voters. Ana Kasparian of the Young Turks echoed this sentiment, especially during a segment featuring Charlemagne the God. She highlighted a recent clip from The View where Sonny Hostin attempted to pressure Charlemagne into endorsing Biden, but failed miserably. Ana went on a rant about why the Democrats need to change in course, expressing her fatigue with their repetitive tactics. But before I delve deeper into it, let's watch the clip.
You endorsed Joe Biden back in 2020, but this time around you say you're not going to endorse anybody. Charlemagne, now is not the time, in my opinion, to sit this one out.
Yeah, I didn't say that. I never said I was sitting it out.
What you gonna do?
I'm definitely voting in November, but what I like to focus on is issues, not individuals. Like, you know, when
but why not endorse?
Huh?
Why not endorse Biden?
Because if I'm sitting here telling my listeners that, you know, you have somebody out there who is a threat to democracy, you have somebody out there who said they want to, you know, suspend the Constitution to overthrow the results of an election. You saw this person, you know, try to lead an attempted coup of this country, and I'm telling people that this guy is a threat to democracy. Have you ever read Project 25? Mm-hmm. There's only 2 candidates out there. So if I'm saying that about this individual, the choice is clear, right?
I think what Charlemagne is doing here is subtly signaling his political leanings without overtly declaring them, and he's carefully masking it under the guise of focusing on policies and issues instead of focusing on the person. This creative approach allows him to remain relevant during the entire election season and influence the audience's political views by portraying himself as a neutral, steering clear of the potential backlash that can come with direct endorsements. This strategy also maintains his appeal across a broader audience by avoiding alienation of any particular group, which is the exact opposite of what people like Robert De Niro are doing. In addition, this positions him as thoughtful and issue-focused, especially since he's doing these shows for a marketing tour for his book. By the way, do subscribe for more discussions like this. Going back to the Views panel, and especially Sonny, what she was doing can be best described as peer pressure. The collective response in the left-dominated media landscape to Biden's relatively scarce endorsements for the upcoming elections has been highly noticeable. This proves how much weight these people can place on endorsements, which are seen as crucial indicators of political viability and support. This dynamic is shaping up to be a defining aspect of how the 2024 elections are covering and discussed in the media, with the potential to significantly influence both the strategy of the political campaigns and the role of celebrities within them. But Ana noticed something that the Democrats constantly do in every election cycle. Just watch the next clip to see her take.
Yeah, I just want to respond to that because, you know, for every election cycle, I've caved into that framing, lesser of two evils, lesser of two evils. At this point, it's the only rallying cry that the Democratic Party has. Vote for us because the other guy is worse. It's been election cycle after election cycle, the same nonsense. And this time around, I'm not going for it. I'm not gonna fall for it because the one saving grace for the Democratic Party previously was this idea that they're the decent ones. They're the ones who care about people of color. They're the ones who care about brown Americans. You know, that's where I stand on it, but I totally hear what you're saying. I mean, focusing on the issues is important. It's just that I don't think the Democratic Party has been focusing on the issues.
Anna's absolutely correct here. The whole reason Biden won the 2020 election was because that he was able to market himself as the lesser of two evils. You see, people put him in the office because they were tired of Trump, but this concept isn't a new one. It actually dates back to the times of Aristotle, where he famously wrote in Nicomachean Ethics, quote, "For the lesser evil can be seen in comparison with the greater evil as a good, since the lesser evil is preferable to the greater one, and whatever is preferable is good." The Democrats have clearly embraced this strategy, using it as a means to garner more votes for the past couple of decades. They've consistently positioned their candidates as more favorable alternatives to their Republican opponents, especially when the opposition is seen as particularly polarizing or controversial. This proves how out of touch they are, because instead of focusing on many pressing issues the nation is facing, such as the terrible economy, illegal immigration, and the world being on the verge of World War III, they attack their opposition stance without providing any viable candidate. Charlemagne also shares a similar sentiment, which he'll share in the next clip.
And you know, you used some language just now that I think is so interesting. And when you see statistics like, 1 in 4 Americans have unfavorable views of, both Trump and Biden, or when you hear my man Tim Ryan, talk about the exhausted majority, how people are just tired of politics. At some point, people got to get tired of choosing between the lesser of two evils, right? Like, I wonder when we even say that, do we even understand what we're saying? Like, if you walked in a room and somebody put two evils on the table. I want you to think of the most evilest things you can possibly think of. And they put them on the table and said, hey, you have to choose between one of these two things. Wouldn't that be a very difficult choice for anybody?
After watching the CNN-hosted debate, the choice doesn't appear that difficult now, but that doesn't mean that we should ignore the increasing number of Americans who are expressing their dissatisfaction with the current situation. The Trump versus Biden rematch is one that many hope to avoid, which shows a broader discontent with the state of American politics. A recent Ipsos Reuters poll found that, quote, Americans are dissatisfied with their choices for president. Most feel that Donald Trump, 56%, and Joe Biden, 70%, should not run for president again in 2024. And that's not all. Many voters are seeking fresh faces and ideas that can break the cycle of polarization and offer a more helpful and unifying vision in the future. The same polls report, quote, 2 in 3, 67%, say they are tired of seeing the same candidates in presidential elections and want someone new. This proves that voters are craving leaders who can move beyond the entrenched partisanship and present innovative solutions to the nation's pressing issues. The dissatisfaction with the current candidates underlines a crucial need for renewal within both parties. Charlemagne raises another important point in this next clip.
Go ahead.
Yeah, to your point, people are tired of voting out of fear because, I first voted for President, Barack Obama. That was the first time I ever voted, period, locally, on the national level. And ever since then, I've just heard the rhetoric, right? The rhetoric is always the Republican candidate is going to end democracy. The Republican candidate doesn't care about democracy. It's just like, damn, y'all been using the same language for all these different presidential Republican candidates to the point where you actually now have a real threat to democracy out there. And you're kind of like the party who cried wolf. And it's like you can't even get, you can't even get the sense of urgency up in America because people are like, oh, I heard that before. You told me that about the last guy.
Well, how else are they supposed to mobilize people and divert their attention away from real issues? The Democrats always focus on the potential dangers and negative consequences of electing the opposition, and this is rather than highlighting their own positive policies and visions for the future, because simply put, they're out of depth when it boils down to this. By painting the other candidate as a threat, they aim to generate support through fear, which is a tactic that exploits voter anxieties rather than empowering them with hopeful, constructive alternatives. This method of campaigning also highly resembles the victimhood mentality that the left tries to cultivate in our modern societies. Whether addressing social justice issues, economic policy, or healthcare, their emphasis is always on the harm and injustices inflicted by external forces rather than putting forward proactive solutions. The results of this approach is what we're seeing currently in the MSM, where multiple left-leaning hosts and political pundits are growing tired of negative campaigning and expressing the need for a more positive, solutions-oriented political discourse. You see, while the fear-based approach may yield short-term electoral gains, it has negative effects on the long term because leadership positions are supposed to be about inspiring people for the better and not endlessly engaging in fear and reactionism. But what are your thoughts on this? Are the Democrats in dire need for a different approach to attempt not to lose this upcoming election? Let's get the conversation rolling in the comments down below.